On this video, we're going to be looking at why and how businesses grow. We're going to be looking at organic growth as opposed to growth by merger or takeover, and the different types of growth that can take place, along with why firms might not grow at all. Good example of a firm that grew organically in the UK is Dominos Pizza. They started off in the USA in 1960, and if you look there, they only planned originally to have 3 stores. Didn't quite work out that way. It took Domino's 25 years to move into the UK at all. You can see there the growth in the number of stores going from virtually nothing in 1985 up to over 1,100 stores now. You can see how they sort of took off round about after 1995. That's almost like the pattern of a plane taking off at an airport. Now, the thing about organic growth, it tends to be quite slow, primarily because of limited finance available if you're growing organically. You'll notice it took Domino's quite a long time to hit that takeoff point. Broadly speaking, there are 3 ways that they can get the money. Either they could plough back their profit into the business, like Apple and Microsoft did for many, many years, didn't take a penny in dividends. The trouble with that is that that's limited to the amount of profit you've made. You could issue new shares. Again, unless the prospective shareholders think the return is going to be fantastic, they might be reluctant to put a lot of money into the firm. Or you could borrow money from the banks or financial markets. Again, the trouble there is that often the banks and financial markets will be looking for collateral, in other words, something that you own to back up the loan. And obviously, if you're small, you won't have that much collateral. There are exceptions, of course. If you look at Twitter, you can see that staggering growth from 2010 to 2019, moving from about 20 million active users a month up to more than 1/3 of a billion in the space of 9 years. And you can also see down the bottom there how their revenue has grown at the same time by geography. Similarly with Facebook, their phenomenal growth from 2008, when they had about 100 million users, up to 2020, where they've got about 2.8 billion users. Now, you'll notice that both of these, which remember are exceptions, are in the IT world, and their marginal costs are very, very, very low. For you to join Facebook, you basically do the work yourself. Facebook don't do much. And they tend to benefit from what's called network economies of scale. In other words, the more people there are using that particular platform, the more are going to be tempted to use it. If your mates are on it, you're going to join it. So, of course, with WhatsApp and Snapchat. Well, the pros and cons of organic growth. Well, first of all, it's less risky than growing by merger. There's less chance of a takeover because you tend to remain control of the business. You can actually control what is going on, and there's less chance of your brand being diluted by merging with somebody else. Good example of that would be where Coca-Cola took over Innocent Drinks. There was a danger, it didn't happen, but there was a danger that the Innocent Drinks brand identity, in other words, doing good stuff, could have been diluted by Coca-Cola's more hard-headed approach. Didn't happen because Coca-Cola basically said to Innocent, carry on doing what you are doing, we won't interfere. Well, there are some cons as well, of course. Biggest one being that there is limited opportunity for growth or profits, and it may be that you miss out on the expertise of a potentially merged firm. So if, for example, Facebook hadn't decided to buy out the 13 people in Instagram for $1 billion, then they would have fallen behind, particularly in the youth market. Obviously, if you're small, you might miss out on economies of scale. You particularly might lose out if your rivals are merging and gaining those economies of scale. And it might be not particularly good if you're a manager of a relatively small firm where you're going to get your promotions, or for shareholders who might want higher profits. Let's get the terminology straight. Integration could involve either mergers or takeovers. It's just where 2 or more businesses are brought together. A merger, strictly speaking, is where those businesses agree to integrate. So company A and company B join together to become company AB. An example would be when British Airways and Iberian Airlines merged, and they became the IAG, the International Airlines Group. No reason why one of the names should have been dropped, but they decided to go for a completely different name. Note that they still trade under their own original brands. A takeover, on the other hand, is where one business gains control of the other one. So either A or B will disappear. They become the owner. One way of doing it is by gaining 51% or more of shares. Now, the point about takeovers is they might be nice and friendly. In other words, the company being taken over might want to be taken over, or it could be hostile, which is where it gets interesting. And there it is with some reasonable examples. So we've got our horizontal merge, Virgin Media, if they merge with BT Media, Lidl and Morrison's. Vertical, so you've got coffee growers being bought up by a transport firm who could then buy up a retailer, or an oil refinery going backwards into drilling or forwards into retail, or a home builder linking with an estate agent. First type of merger is a horizontal merge. That's when you are merging basically with one of your rivals. You're in the same industry and at the same production stage. So, for example, a lot of sixth form colleges are merging together at the moment. So what I've put in yellow on the right hand side are economies of scale that would be true for any type of merge: managerial, research and development, financial, and the spreading of fixed costs. Those I put in green are specific to horizontal integration. So obviously, if you're bigger, you are going to get more purchasing economies of scale. You might be able to change the techniques of production. You might, for example, be able to, in the case of supermarkets, develop more integrated IT systems or delivery systems. You might get marketing economies of scale because you're able to hit more customers with one marketing go. And of course, you may get to transport economies of scale. In addition to economies of scale, savings on cost, you might be able to boost your revenues. You're going to be bigger, you're going to have more market power. Now that means that the impact on consumers might not be quite so good, because with market power you can raise your prices, and that raises the potential of the competition authorities getting involved. Similarly, you're going to have greater monopsony power over your suppliers. And again, particularly in the industry of supermarkets, where there is a regulator, that might incur actions by the supermarkets regulator if he reckons that you're exploiting their power. It's a she, actually. A vertical merge is again when you're in the same industry but you're at different stages of production. A backwards vertical merge is where you merge with a firm at the previous stage. So for example, a college could merge with, I don't know, a secondary school. Forwards vertical merging is where you merge with the next stage of production. This would be the unlikely scenario of a college taking over a university. Again, with vertical merge, you might get transport economies of scale. The particular benefits of vertical merging is that you cut out the middleman, because you no longer need a supplier because you're supplying your own goods, or you no longer need an outlet. So you'll be taking the profits otherwise the middleman would have taken. It gives you, again, these are particular advantages, guaranteed supplies if you're vertically integrating backwards, and it also gives you guaranteed outlets if you're going forwards. That's basically why Microsoft bought out Nokia, because nobody else was putting Windows on their phones, so they wanted Nokia to do it for them. Didn't work, but there you go. Now, given that you have got supplies and outlets, you may well be starving your rivals of those supplies or outlets. Now that will obviously have a negative impact on competition, and might be one of those reasons why the competition authorities either try to break up a vertically integrated industry or prevent a merge taking place at all. Good example of that would be in the power industry, the electricity and gas industry, where the same people that get the gas out of the sea are the people that pipe it and distribute it and sell it to you. So there has been action taken there. That's a vertically integrated industry that the authorities felt that it was very difficult for others to break into. Conglomerate integration is where you are integrating with a completely different industry. A really good firm that shows all of the different types of integration is Disney. So horizontally, they've bought up the Star Wars and Marvel franchises. Vertically backwards, they've bought up clothes and makeup. Vertically forwards, they've bought up the Disney Channel, so they can now show their own stuff direct on TV. And Conglomerate, well, first of all, they did do a Conglomerate move without merging when they started to develop their own theme parks, but they've also bought up Hong Kong International theme parks, Lucasfilms, Pixar, Marvel, ESPN, and Touchstone Pictures. You'll notice that with most of those, they are actually linked to the type of stuff that Disney has done before, but that could be a conglomerate merge. There's only one real reason for going for a conglomerate merge, and that is to spread your risks. So if one of your markets collapses, you've got others you can fall back on. So what's going to restrict your growth? Well, first of all, your market size may well be limited. It might be restricted in the first place, it might be in decline, or it might be a niche market, like for example, a company called Quiet PCs sell quiet PCs, and not everyone wants to go down that particular route. So if they are to leave that market, they're going to have to diversify either organically or by takeover. And the point about diversification is it's the most risky form of growth. It could well go wrong. Secondly, of course, you might have a lack of finance to expand. You might wish to expand, but you might not be able to get the finance to do it. Thirdly, of course, you might not want to do it in the first place. You might be happy with the level of profit that you're making. You might want to retain control, and sometimes if you grow, you lose control, particularly if you grow by takeover. And it might be that you want to retain the core values of your business, which again is easier to do if you remain fairly small. Finally, of course, the regulators might step in. They might physically stop you merging, growing that way. For example, Sainsbury's and Asda's wanted to merge, but they weren't allowed to do it. They're going to be particularly concerned if the firm has experience of abusing its market power, or if they fear it might. So in the case of Sainsbury's Asda, the authorities felt that they would become too powerful and could potentially rip off consumers and get lots of local monopoly power. And that's it.